Thank you so much, Sadia. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Restore Your Gut Health, Digestive Wellness Tips. I'm Allison Brill. I'm a certified health coach and community health advocate with over 15 years of public health and mental wellness experience. And I provide transformative coaching, nutrition and wellness education, and cooking classes to people struggling with digestive issues and food allergies. And I help folks find relief and have more energy and enjoy food again. And I have a whole body positive approach to well-being. I'm currently based in Cleveland and work everywhere remotely. And I used to be in the Chicago area and recently moved to Cleveland. But that's a little bit about me, and I'd love to hear about you, where you're joining from, what brought you here tonight, or if you have any hopes about this workshop or things or particular areas you're interested in, please share in the chat. And I recognize there are many places you could be tonight, so thank you so much for your presence here and for investing in your health. Right. So let's dive in today. All right. This is some of what we'll be covering today. Oh, and also this is, I definitely want to answer all of your questions. I may not be able to answer your questions during the presentation piece, but definitely at the end. So please do type any questions you have or comments in the chat. All right, so here is our, we'll be talking about some common symptoms and causes of stomach discomfort. Then we'll talk about some simple strategies for restoring your gut health and some stretches and breathing practices that can bring quick relief. And I want to start with some data to set the context for our time together. And these are some statistics from the International Foundation for Gastrointestinal Disorders. There's about 10 to 15% of the US adult population suffers from irritable bowel syndrome or IBS symptoms. And about 60 to 65% of folks who report having these IBS symptoms identify as female. There's a few reasons for this. People with uteruses have more crowded digestive systems. We're sharing space with more reproductive organs, and women also have longer colons. Interesting, I found about 10 centimeters longer than people without uteruses. So it can make digestion more difficult. And also the fluctuating hormone levels can affect digestion. There's also women have more stress as caretakers. They're more often caretakers of others, of loved ones. And women's health concerns are often more dismissed by doctors too. So some reasons for the higher rates. Rates of digestive issues are even higher in marginalized communities due to minority stress. So the data is really lacking here, but communities who experience persistent prejudice and discrimination, including people of color and LGBTQ folks, people with disabilities, just to name a few, also experience higher levels of negative health outcomes in general. So that includes digestive problems. And then 32 million Americans have food allergies. That's almost 10% of all adults have some kind of food allergy. And that could be entirely its own workshop. There's a lot of reasons for food allergies. If everyone can make sure they're on mute, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. So abdominal pain is one of the most common issues that cause adults to seek medical care. So if you are in this boat here having symptoms or abdominal pain, you are not alone, or food allergies. There's a lot of people who are also experiencing these symptoms. So what are the symptoms I'm talking about? So these are some common symptoms. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. And if this is you, I empathize. I've been there and it's really not pleasant. Certainly makes life more challenging. There are physical symptoms like bloating and gas, stomach pain and cramping, constipation, diarrhea, excessive burping before or after meals. You can also have poor sleep as a result of poor digestion. You could fall asleep after meals. I don't know if that happens to anyone frequently, or reduced appetite, or having some heartburn or nausea, or even vomiting. And then poor digestion can also impact our emotional and mental health. So we can have brain fog, just not thinking clearly, decreased energy, can have those peaks and crashes, where you feel really alert or even hyperactive and then just crash, and mood swings as well in our emotions. There's also skin issues that some people experience as a result of poor digestion, can have acne or redness, rosacea, even rashes. And then allergies, perhaps you have, allergies from the environment or from pets or whatever, or mold or whatever it may be, and it can be exacerbated by poor digestion as well. All right. And there are a lot of reasons for poor digestion. I'm going to just give an overview of some of them. There are certainly more. Antibiotic use is a big one, and this can be a long time ago, even in childhood when you had antibiotics, or currently, or in the recent past. Any type of antibiotic can throw your gut bacteria balance out of whack for a long, long time. And every course of antibiotics impacts our digestive system. I found this fun fact. Did you know that 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut? So if our gut health is compromised, so is our immune system. And then stress, of course, we all experience stress, right? And that can certainly impact our digestive system. And poor digestion can also make us stressed out. So it's this vicious cycle. So when we experience an event as stressful, it releases the stress hormone cortisol. And when we become stressed enough to trigger that fight or flight response, our digestion slows or even stops completely so that the body can divert all its energy to facing that perceived threat, right? So stress can also change the gut bacteria itself, and that can influence our mood. So you see how it's this cycle here. The gut is sometimes known as the second brain. I don't know if anyone's heard that before, and that's because the gut's nerves are directly related to and connected to the brain. So when something happens in one, it affects the other one. Poor sleep. So I definitely this definitely happens to me. I don't know if anyone experiences this. When you have poor sleep, for me, it can be even an hour or two less than that my body needs. The next day, my digestion's a little out of whack. And if this is happening on a chronic basis, it's pretty likely that someone may have poor digestion as well as insomnia. Poor sleep leads to poor digestion and immune function because it increases stress in the body, and so that impacts the gut. Some folks who have underlying health issues, particularly digestive health issues like celiac disease, Crohn's, irritable bowel syndrome, irritable bowel disease, GERD, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, and many, many more that obviously can impact the digestive system. And then eating a lot of processed foods too, which I'll get into a little bit more later, can certainly cause poor digestion. And then lastly, food allergies or intolerances. Really important to see a doctor or an allergist if you think you have a food allergy or intolerance. And this may present as a skin issue like hives or rash or something like that, or respiratory like sneezing, running nose, or behavioral, fatigue, headaches, anxiety, sore muscles and joints. So all of that can present from a food allergy. And then there's the main allergies in foods, which have I love the acronyms SAD, GAS, which are the most common food allergens. So that's soy, artificial sweeteners, dairy, gluten, alcohol, and sugar. And there are many, many more, of course, that people have reactions to, but those are the common ones. Okay, so let's get right into it. So we've talked about some of the symptoms and reasons for poor digestion, and now what we can do about it. So there's many causes and of poor digestion, and there are many solutions. So there's a lot that you can do to improve your digestion and feel better right away. So I'm going to share 5 tips that you can implement. You could even start tonight if you wanted to, or during this workshop, if you're having an off stomach day. Some of these might be helpful for you. So my first tip for you all is to drink hot water whenever you can, right? So cold and ice water is commonplace in the US, but cold water is not a friend to the digestive system. Cold water can shrink our blood vessels, restrict digestion, decrease our immunity, which we don't need right now, especially, and impair the breakdown of fats. Warm water has the opposite effect, positive. It can relieve constipation, break down our food, remove toxins from the body, improve circulation, and also help greatly if you're having a cough or sore throat. Very soothing to the body. If you make tea, it has an extra benefit like a peppermint or a ginger, which are also really great for digestion. So you have the hot water plus those herbs and spices that are naturally digestive, have benefits. And warm water, especially upon waking and in between meals, is the best care, among the best care you can show your body, especially as the weather cools too. The most important point here is to stay hydrated in general. So if you don't have access to hot water, that's quite all right, right? It's to stay hydrated. That's like the most important thing for digestion, have enough water in our body. And the amount of water that you require is going to depend on your individual needs, your activity level, the temperature, many other factors. But I would say aim for your urine to be clear, and then you know you're drinking enough water for your body. All right, and another invitation for you all to improve your digestion is to treat eating as a sacred practice. So what I mean by that is digestion begins in the mouth, right? So when we chew slowly, completely, and with intention, we're able to stimulate the saliva production. So our food can begin digesting before it even reaches our stomach. So we're given a leg up to our digestion by eating in a mindful way. So some folks like to have a appreciation or gratitude practice when eating, and making meals a time for connection with yourself, your loved ones, anyone at your table, and the food that's nourishing you, right? Like having a gratitude for where the food came from that you're eating, that relationship you have with food, because we have to have a relationship with our food, just like we do with people, that food that's nourishing us. So being grateful for that food, and for the time to, if you're able to cook at home, that time to really slow down and treat cooking and eating as a sacred practice. So it's a way to get more in touch and connect or reconnect with our bodies too. So, all right, that's my other tip. And then avoiding alcohol. There's many reasons to avoid alcohol. I'm particularly interested in this case in gut health. Alcohol alters our gut bacteria. It feeds bad bacteria. It also messes with our sleep. We might fall asleep quickly after drinking, but then we're not able to have a good deep sleep. It interrupts the REM cycles in our sleep. So we're not getting the good quality sleep that we need. And sleep is a time for our bodies to repair and restore. So we need the whole time, the REM cycle, and the whole time for sleep. Alcohol, like sugar, causes inflammation in the body. And alcohol also can make gas and bloating worse, especially if you have IBS or another digestive condition. So some suggestions for alternatives are, seltzer teas or unsweetened apple cider, nut milks. You can get creative. All right. So move my slide over a little bit. So another tip for you all to improve your digestion, help heal the gut, is to eat healing foods. And these are foods that fight inflammation. So inflammation is how your immune system reacts to irritation, injury, or infection. And it's a normal response and a natural part of healing. But inflammation that lasts too long can harm your body and lead to chronic conditions like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, depression, Alzheimer's, on and on. So one of the most powerful tools that we can do to combat inflammation comes not from the pharmacy, but from the grocery store. So this is by and large, we have control over what we eat for the most part, right? So here are some ideas. There are many, many more foods that are anti-inflammatory. Here's some of the top ones: tomatoes, and then fruits, especially oranges and berries like strawberries, blueberries, cherries, and then nuts, especially almonds, walnuts, some seeds too, like flax seeds and sunflower seeds, hemp seeds, really high in the omega-3s, which are good for brain health, eye health, and digestion. Also oils too, and I could do a whole workshop just on oils, and I think I might because it's such a fascinating topic and there's a lot to it. But the type of oil that you use is really important for cooking, and some oils cause inflammation and others can help reduce inflammation. So some good go-to oils that I really like are extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil, and coconut oil in moderation too are good go-to oils. And then some oils are good for cooking only. Some are good as sort of dressings that you don't heat because the smoke point, you got to know, just the point is just to check the labels for the smoke point, and look for oils in glass bottles, tend to be keep better and longer. And then leafy greens. I'd say if you only do one thing different this week, if you're someone who doesn't eat a lot of greens, is to incorporate more dark leafy greens into your diet. Particularly lightly cook them. It's easier to digest when foods are lightly cooked than raw. So spinach, kale, collards, mustard greens, arugula, those bitter greens are really good for our digestion. So if you can, have some type of green, dark green veggie every day. And then fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, tuna, sardines, anchovies, those type of fish. Particularly wild fish. The farmed fish has a lot of toxins in them. So when possible, try to avoid the farmed fish, but wild fish, especially salmon, mackerel, sardines. I really like the mackerel and sardines because they come in a little can. They're cheap. You can just put them in a stir fry. You don't have to defrost them or worry about it spoiling. They're very tasty. I'd say start with mackerel if you're a little unsure of how this is going to taste, but I put them in stir fries and all kinds of things. And the smaller the fish, the less mercury it has. So tuna is great fish, healthy, but you got to eat it in moderation because it's high in mercury because it's a large fish. So salmon is one of the best fishes out there as well for those omega-3s. And then also avocados and sweet potatoes, beans and lentils, and then some spices like turmeric, ginger, garlic, chilies, cinnamon are all fantastic for fighting inflammation. All right. And probiotics. You may have heard a lot about probiotics lately. They are foods or supplements that contain live microorganisms that maintain or improve the healthy bacteria in our bodies. And they're found naturally in foods that are raw and fermented foods like kefir, yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, miso, and they're also in supplements as well. And some people benefit from the extra level of probiotics, especially if you have a digestive condition or you've just taken a course of antibiotics. I would up the probiotic content to counteract the effects of the antibiotic. But it's important to get probiotics every day, and you just need a little bit. Like if you're eating something like kimchi or sauerkraut or yogurt, you don't need a whole lot, just a little bit. And I'd say if you're not eating any at all and you want to try to incorporate some raw fermented foods, start slowly, just a tiny, tiny bit, because the stomach kind of has to like get used to it, the gut will get used to it, and we'll like it eventually, but you got to start slow. And if you're thinking of taking a probiotic supplement, say just make sure that you're reading the label and finding a high quality supplement, because there's a full shelf of them when you go to the store now. There's so many. And I would say look for a refrigerated one, because they can lose some of their potency when they're on the shelf. And you can also talk to a doctor. You can do some research on your own to find, and it's also not a one size fits all. What works well for me may not work well for you, and they all have different strains. So it's worth trying, but just do a little research into that. And now it's time for a stretch break, an intentional stretch break. So physical activity stimulates our gut and increases that intestinal activity. It also increases blood flow to the muscles in our digestive system, which helps massage our food along the digestive tract. It can help relieve constipation too. There are some specific stretches that are especially good for digestion, and I will show you some, and I invite you to join me if you are able to either stand, or you can do these seated as well if the standing is not available to you. But I think it's good to stretch all day long, especially many of us are at the computer or looking down at our phones all day long. So just to stretch. The first one is putting your hands over your head. You can look up. We look down all day long. Stretch out our neck. You reach real tall. And if you can, to come up on your tippy toes. Take a deep breath and then relax. And for all these stretches, know your body and take care of you. If you have any injuries, or you know that you can't, something's not going to be good for you, please take care of you. Let's do this one more time. Arms up, and this time you can grab one hand over the other like this and just gently lean to the side. You should feel a nice gentle stretch. Move down here in your rib cage area down to your hip. Just a nice gentle stretch. And then come back to center, and then go to the other side. Nice gentle stretch. And take a nice deep breath. Remember to keep breathing. And then bring the arms down. And then another stretch or movement I really like is the hip circles. Hopefully you can see here. So we're going to put our hands on our hips and do nice wide circles with our hips. I like to do about 5 in one direction. Just nice and slow. No rush on these. And then 5 in the other direction. This is really good for getting things moving. Things are getting stuck. It's good to stretch out the back too. And then another really good stretch for digestion, I guess the movement and it's a stretch, is coming around here. So I'm going to put one hand on my shoulder, one hand on the small of my back, and I'm going to twist, bend. You can slightly bend your knees just to be real loose. And I'm going to turn and look over my shoulder. So I have my hand on my opposite shoulder, and I'm going to look over that shoulder. And you should just feel a nice gentle stretch in the rib cage area. Then come to center and do that the other side. And you can do this one nice and slow. Some people like to do a little faster. Makes it a more nice fluid motion here. You can do this 5 times if it feels really nice. You can do it 10 times. Just nice and gentle. And these twisting motions, this kind of motion, the hip circles, the stretches like this, all of this, you should be feeling it in the hip area down to the digestive organs. So you're getting things moving down there. And another good one that's a little tricky for me to show you on the Zoom, but is lying flat on your back, either on a bed or on the floor, and pulling your knees to your chest and giving yourself a hug. That one's also really good for the lower back. And you can just kind of rock back and forth, holding your knees. That one's really good for getting gas out if you're having a lot of gas. So basically any movement is good for digestion, right? So if you are someone who enjoys walking, dancing, yoga, biking, hiking, swimming, whatever it is that you enjoy, that's going to benefit your gut health. It doesn't have to be intense. It could literally just be a walk around the block or some of these stretches that we just did. Any movement is going to benefit you. And if you tend to sit all day long, as many of us do at computers, try to get up and stretch even every hour, even just for a few minutes, just to get things moving. All right. All right, so we're gonna shift gears from movement and stretching over to sugar, another one of my favorite topics. How many names do you think there are for sugar? You can pop your guesses in the chat. Anyone have any guesses? Anybody? Don't be shy. Let's see. Got some guesses for 10. Oh, 50 to 100. Okay. Good guesses. Anybody else? Many? 25. Another for 10. Great, great guesses. Thank you so much. There are, in fact, at least 56. I've seen numbers as high as 80 or 90, but a common number I've seen is 56 names for sugar. And these are just some of them. I'm not going to read them all to you. Some may be familiar, brown sugar, cane sugar, glucose, molasses. Some of these you may have heard of, others not so much, mannitol, corn syrup, buttered sugar, agave. There's so many out there. And the sugar industry is well aware of that, how confusing this is when you see a label and it has 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes different names for sugar. And if you don't see sugar, you might think, oh, this isn't so bad, right? These are all just different names for processed sugar. So it's important to know, you don't have to memorize this list, of course, but just get familiar with some of the names of sugar. And there are different types. There's glucose, and many of these are found naturally in foods, right? So glucose is found naturally as well as it's in processed foods. There's fructose, which is your fruit sugar found in fruit naturally. There's sucrose, which is our common table sugar. Lactose, which is the sugar in dairy, in milk. And then there's sugar syrup molecules that end in ose, O-S-E, like dextrose, fructose, glucose, lactose, maltose, sucrose. So if you remember nothing else, and those ose, that's probably a sugar. So it's important to read the labels, both the nutrition facts, to look for that line that says total sugars and added sugars. So if you see total sugars, it might be all natural. Say you buy unsweetened applesauce, it's going to have sugar. So it'll probably say something like 10 or 12 grams of sugar. And then if you buy the cinnamon or the flavored applesauces, it'll say added sugar 5 or 10 or whatever it is. And so the added is this processed sugar. And our body does process the refined or processed sugars differently than these natural sugars, like found in an apple, for instance. So refined sugar causes inflammation in the body, which can create lots of wreak havoc on our digestive system, right? It can alter our gut bacteria balance. And this is because our blood sugar, when it spikes, our bodies become inflamed. And this inflammation affects all our organs, right? From our heart to lungs and skin, and can cause redness and swelling and stress in the body. And then we can also get all those fun symptoms I mentioned earlier, like gas and bloating and diarrhea and pain and cramping and all of that. Even acne, heartburn, fatigue can come from processed sugar. And this also includes the artificial sweeteners, like the saccharin, aspartame, sucralose that are found in some of those the sugar packets, for coffee and tea. Even stevia has been shown to alter gut bacteria. So it's a good alternative, but some people do experience stomach issues from these artificial sweeteners too. So something to keep in mind. What was I going to share with you? I'll move on because I want to share some alternatives. So this isn't to say never eat anything with processed sugar ever. That's not what I'm saying. If you do okay with some processed sugar, having a cookie, having something now and again is fine if that works for you. Some people are really, really sensitive to it though. And if you're experiencing a lot of gut health issues and you are eating processed sugar, it might be something to consider. Like I, invite you to get curious about that and maybe see what happens if you don't eat it for a week or two. Like just take out that processed sugar or dairy or whatever it might be that you're thinking might be an issue. But these are some ideas for alternatives to refined sugars. There are ways to eat and bake sweet treats without refined sugar that taste delicious. I make them all the time, and I don't use processed sugar at all because there are things like dates, right? These are nothing added, nothing added. Just dates are an amazing sweetener for baked goods, cookies, and muffins. I often use sweeteners like vanilla extract. This is orange. This is lemon. There's almond, peppermint, lots of extracts. There's no sugar added, but they have a nice sweetness. And then there's natural fruits, right? Like applesauce and bananas and all types of fruits. Depends on what you're making, right? If you're making cookies, and you might be able to put a banana in there or applesauce that would taste good, or muffins. Give that a try, right? And then veggies that are naturally sweet are sweet potatoes, yams, beets, carrots, winter squash. I don't know if anyone here likes to roast root vegetables. I'm a huge fan. And when you make sweet potatoes or beets or squash in the oven, to me it smells like candy, like I'm baking cookies or something. It's so sweet, and there's nothing added. It's just good for you, especially as the winter is coming. These root vegetables are fantastic and delicious. Coconut, as long as it's unsweetened, coconut is sweet enough by itself, right? So it could be coconut flakes, coconut manna. I have it right here. It's Manna's the brand. It's just coconut butter. I'm a huge fan of this. I mean, it's coconut, so you're not going to want to eat the whole jar at once. You got to be careful how much you're eating, right? It's coconut, but it's very low in sugar. It's high in fiber, has a little protein. It's just whole coconut, and it's very sweet on its own. This coconut butter to me tastes like icing, and I use it that way sometimes. Or you could even put it on stir fries. I put it on everything, really. I haven't found anything that it doesn't go on yet, but I'm working on it. And then spices. This is just one example. I'm not promoting any brands here. This is just the one I have. This is a pumpkin pie spice, or cinnamon by itself, or cloves, or garlic, not garlic, ginger. That's what I meant. Ginger, nutmeg, allspice, all those types of spices are naturally sweet. And some nuts like cashews, macadamia nuts, pecans also have a natural hint of sweetness with them. You can grind them up and put them in different recipes. And I think that's what I wanted to tell you there. So lots of ways to make foods sweet without the processed sugars. Okay, let's see. All right. So I briefly touched on this before, but another tip that I wanted to share with you all is to prioritize sleep when you can. I recognize that there are a lot of reasons why probably the majority of us have trouble sleeping. There's a lot going on in our world right now and in our personal lives that make it hard to sleep. This is to highlight the importance of sleep. So when we don't get enough sleep, as I mentioned before, it increases stress, and that impacts our gut. So our hormones can become unbalanced when we don't get enough sleep, and that can lead to bloating and inflammation in the body, and it can even lead to food sensitivities and stomach pain or constipation or changes to the gut microbiome. It's a really delicate balance in there. So that's why the fermented foods are really good, or a probiotic supplement, and just getting a really good diversity of food in there too, of good healthy foods. But as far as sleep goes, everyone's body is different. But if you can aim for at least 7, if not 8, some people need 9 hours, that will do your body a world of good. And children need even more sleep, around 9 to 11 hours. Some people do fine on less than 7. And everyone's different. And as we age, that changes how much sleep we need. But in general, at least 7 to 8, if you can, is great. And if you are having trouble sleeping, I do have I actually do a whole workshop on sleep and digestion, but happy to talk afterwards or later. Feel free to email me about any, either about movements that we've done or about ideas for getting better quality sleep, because it is a challenging one. All right, so the last idea I wanted to share for you all is about the importance of deep belly breathing and digestion. They're intimately connected. So when we're babies, right? If you ever watched a baby or a dog or cat, if you watch them sleep, their stomachs rise and fall when they sleep, just naturally. If you've ever seen that, it goes really, you can see it. It's pretty dramatic, up and down. As we get older, we tend to breathe more shallowly. We have more stress in our lives when we become older children and then adults, and we don't breathe as deeply as we did. And this places a lot of stress on the body when we're not getting our full blood flow to the muscles. The shallow breathing induces a stress response and can even slow down or shut down our digestion, because our body's going into a fight or flight or freeze state when we have this shallow chest breathing all the time. If you've ever seen on TV or maybe in real life an EMT or someone who's having a panic attack or can't catch their breath, a brown paper bag to breathe into, there's nothing special about the brown paper bag. It's having them slow their breathing to do this deep belly breathing so that it calms the nervous system down, so the body can come to a more relaxed and equilibrium state. So I want to share some breathing practices, and I invite you all to join me if you would like. It's important to breathe deeply throughout the day as much as possible. Or if you catch yourself, maybe shallow breathing, you've had a stressful day or a moment, and just to stop and be like, oh, I can, sometimes even just thinking about breathing or seeing the word breathe can help us remember to slow our breathing down. So the first first invitation for you all is just to get an idea of what that deep breathing feels like. So I invite you to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your abdomen, and to breathe in through your nose and feel your belly should rise when you do this. Instead of breathing through your chest, you're breathing through your belly. So breathe in through your nose, have your belly rise, and then exhale through your mouth and feel your stomach sort of deflate. So in through the nose, out through the mouth. We'll do that a few more times, nice and slow. You can close your eyes if you'd like, or relax your gaze. All right. And then the next practice it's called 4-7-8 breathing. The exact numbers aren't the most important thing. The important thing is that we're going to breathe in for about 4 counts, hold our breath for about 7, and then exhale for 8. So the idea is to breathe in, hold, and then exhale for longer than we inhale. And this is a great way to calm the nervous system, which in turn calms the digestive system. And the digestive system has to be in a calm state to work properly. So if you tend to get, really worked up, or I don't know if you've noticed, or maybe it's an invitation to do a little test this week and see if you're getting kind of worked up, how is your digestion that day? And if you do some breathing practices, maybe that could help. All right, so let's try a few together. And it's great to do these at least four cycles. So we're going to breathe in through our nose for 4. So ready? 2, 3, 4, and then hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then exhale through the mouth for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do that again. So breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4, and hold for about 7. And then exhale for about 8. And you're welcome to do a couple more on your own at your own pace. All right. Feel free to keep going if that's feeling good and relaxing to you. That extra exhale, that extra few seconds of exhale is really good for a natural way for the body to release toxins too, to get that fully push all that air out of the lungs. So these are great practices. There's many more types of breathing practices out there, but these are great to do throughout the day. And if it's hard to remember to do them, some people like to set a reminder on their phone, or I have a whiteboard and I just write breathe on it. And it really reminds me, I'm like, oh, I could do, even if just a couple minutes a day to start. If you're able to do longer, 10 minutes, 20 minutes of breathing or meditation or mindfulness practice, whatever type of practice that works for you. You can find free videos on YouTube, and yoga nidra is a great practice too. It's a brainwave yoga, kind of a meditative kind of practice. Any type of practice or breathing you can do is going to be beneficial for your entire body, your nervous system, your digestive system, your mental health, everything. And I forgot to mention, you can do these laying down on your back. You can do them sitting up, but it can be good to close the eyes to take away all that external stimulation. And there's something about lying on the back that actually has a really calming effect on the nervous system too. So if you're able to lay on your back sometime throughout the day and do some breathing, that can be really, really incredible too. All right, so I know I've shared a lot of information with you all, so I wanted to do a quick recap here, some ways to improve your digestion, things you can do right away. You can drink warm or hot water or tea throughout the day, and in between meals is best too. Eat with intention, treating eating and cooking mealtime as a sacred practice. Eating whole and nutrient-rich foods, meaning foods in their whole form, so not processed, but whole foods. And eating probiotic-rich fermented foods, or taking a supplement if that's something that you would benefit from. And then trying, whenever possible, to replace processed or refined sugars with more naturally sweetened foods. And then to stretch and move throughout the day as much as possible, and to breathe deeply from our belly as often as possible as well. All right, and then my final bonus tip here is that sometimes it's helpful to have support, especially if you're really struggling with your gut health. It can be complicated to figure out digestion and nutrition. I only cover the very, broad overview of this topic today. So sometimes people find it helpful to work with a coach or with someone to help provide that really individual support, especially if you have special food needs, food allergies. And each of these tips I shared could be their own workshop. And so I want you to keep in mind that it can take time to build new practices. So if you heard something tonight that you want to try out, know that it can take, the research says, about 21 days to build a new practice, whatever it is, around food and eating, or literally anything else. So have patience and gentleness with yourself if you want to incorporate one of these things and it's a little tricky, challenging. Know that it's possible, and it can be helpful to find support.